How do you know the difference when your soul is running your business and when survival is running the show backstage? Okay, so how do you know the difference between when your soul is running your business and when survival is running the show backstage? And what do you do when your soul is longing to be heard, but you feel blocked, right? And you feel like you have a sense of fear, you have a sense of not enoughness. You know what you love, you know what you're meant to be doing, but for some reason the soul is yearning, and yet we can't necessarily get ourselves to necessarily implement the strategies that we know, or maybe we're not sure of, to move our business forward and to have our soul align with our business. Okay, so just so that we can kind of start to understand when the soul is running the business and when the survival is running the business. Hey Claudia, nice to see you. What happened? So I'm going to tell you a story about one of our clients. So she was doing all the things. She was, having graphic design contract work. She was doing logos. She was branding. She was copywriting. She was even working a side business for her family. And she was doing all the things. And she would be, working till late hours of the night. And then in her awake life, it was very challenging for her relationships with her daughter and with her husband, because she was burning the midnight oil. So of course her relationship suffered, and it was very difficult for her to have harmony within her business, within her relationships, and within her work, right? And so what seemed to be looking like a really thriving business, because she was hustling, she was doing the work, she was busy with clients, actually was in some ways sucking her soul, where some of the symptoms that that you're in misalignment is, you're constantly doing all of this busy work. You're staying up late hours of the night. You feel like you're doing all the things, you're hustling, and yet you feel overworked and underpaid. And there's still this longing to do the thing you love. And so with our client Jen, what would happen was she would do all of these things, but when we start to work together, what we start to realize is that her zone of genius, her unique ability, her gift to the world was actually as a figurative artist. She's been a figurative artist for decades. She's been on community boards, in the artist community. She's done workshops in the artist community. She's always in invited to these different festivals for artisans. So that was her zone of genius, yet she was doing all of these other things: copywriting, logo making, branding, doing these small contract works, and then she would make it conditional. She would fit in her zone of genius somewhere, maybe like midnight, if she was lucky, and that really left her with this place of feeling drained, right? And so very often, and let me know if this sounds familiar to you, are you, maybe you're doing your daytime job, maybe you're actually even doing what looks like what you love, but yet there's still something missing. There's still a yearning to teach, maybe on a deeper level. There's still this sense of you're doing all the things, you're hustling, you're burning out, and you're still feeling like you're underpaid and overworked. So let me know in the comments if that was you or is you right now, because I think we all go through this, right? And so there was this longing to focus on the work she loved. And so the way it kind of looked for me in my life is, as many yoga teachers in the community, we're teaching every day, we're doing workshops, we're doing maybe the online thing, we're doing private yoga, clients, we're maybe doing retreats, and I was also teaching teacher training. So that was a lot of work in the field that I love. And from the outside, it looks like the thing I love. But yet I had this deep longing and this deep sense of, every time I would teach a group class, I'm like, this is it, but not quite so. This is not exactly what it is I want to teach, right? And so the way it happens is very often when we're in this busy work, what happens is that we are in this hyper vigilant mode, right? Our nervous system is in this hyper vigilant mode, which is what we can consider like that survival mode. And it's doing all the things, and it's moving from that place of needing to survive, needing to protect what it is that you have, and also maybe even protect an identity and a version of yourself that we unknowingly were given. So it's like the two things are happening where you're kind of following your soul, but for some reason something is off alignment. And then in the background, something is happening where you feel like this is what I love, but why doesn't it feel joyous? Why doesn't it feel nourishing? Why does it feel like I'm hustling and I actually start to feel resentful for the work I do, even though you may be creating nice results for your clients, you're really doing good work, you're getting really good feedback, they're telling you like, oh my gosh, this work is so deep, or this work is so expert in such a high level. There's something in you that realizes maybe there's more, right? And so for me, what happened was I've always taught from a spiritual perspective. I've always been that person that has gone deep in the mechanics of the body, deep in the mind, deep in energy. And the feedback has always been like, whoa, wow, like that was really transformative. But there's this other side of me, right? And all of us have a certain part of us. There's another side of me that loves business and entrepreneurship. And it was actually really exciting. And it's really exciting to learn about marketing and selling and sales. And so what would happen is I would get pushback from whenever I would talk about it to, like, let's say my friends in my community, and I would get pushback and they would kind of tell me like, well, no, teaching yoga, you're not supposed to be making money. That's not what it's about. But there was part of me that was like, I understand that concept, but how can I keep on going and doing what I love and burn out and not want to feel nourished, not want to feel fulfilled, not want to have like a financial income that's going to nourish me, my family, my teammates, the retreats that I go on. And when I show up to my clients, I can show up with like all of my energy. Like there is something in me that was misaligned, right? And so let me know if that has been true for you. Let me see here. I'm going to look here to see on my my computer, because my screen doesn't always have the comments for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, and so just let me know if that's true for you, because what happens is many of our clients, they come to us with this sense of confusion, this sense of overwhelm. They're like, I'm kind of doing the thing that I think I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be loving it. And yet I feel really confused. And sometimes it comes out like, I feel confused about my purpose. I feel confused about my niche. Should I even still be doing this thing? And yet there's another part of it. So it's like what's happening is all of a sudden this need to survive and the soul's need to thrive are kind of battling each other out. Where the soul knows like, no, this is the thing, but their survival is there, and it's continually protecting you, because what happens is when you are on this hyper vigilant mode, we have a very hard time slowing down and being able to receive what the soul is trying to tell us, right? So if you were to work with me, that's the very first thing we do in our program. We see how the survival, so the way it works, right, is we basically come into this world as pure beings. And we come into this world as pure beings, and we just act as pure beings. And then our outside world, especially people who are caring for us, tells us some sort of unconscious message that you're not allowed to be that way. That is the wrong response. You should feel guilty. You should not be allowed. That's not enough. Just being your pure self. So then when we're younger, what happens is it gets imprinted in our physical body, right? We literally, in our physical posture, get imprinted with how we're going to protect ourselves from this world that is telling me that my pure self is not enough. And then our baby mind, right? Usually when we're young, when we can start to have that memory, right? Because our body will remember. So when we're babies, you know, when babies, they say babies remember everything. So that imprint still happens in the body. But when as soon as we start to understand how to remember, what happens is that we also start to create stories as to why things are happening outside of us. Okay, and then imagine when you're 4 years old, you have this story. And then what happens is the external world continuously, so here's the journey, it continuously gives you these opportunities to heal that deep-rooted trauma that shows up as this survival mode, shows up as this hyper-vigilant nervous system, shows up as this constant overall, shows up as this doubt, this overwhelm, this I don't know what I'm doing, I'm confused, it shows up that way. And so that core wound, right, was imprinted way back when. And then life, this is the interesting thing about being human, life gives us these opportunities, right, to see the different iteration and trigger us to see and face our core wound over and over and over again. And here's where we get confused. We think it's the outside world. So, in business, it will look, oh my God, like I'm so busy. I'm so busy that I have to just keep on putting out these fires. When really there's a story of you're not enough. So you know what? Don't focus on the thing you love. Focus on just, surviving. Focus on getting it done. Focus on pleasing other people. Focus on pleasing your team. Focus on pleasing, what you think the collective thinks you're supposed to be doing. Focus on what you think your parents want you to make money. So just like hustle and do this thing. And so we're constantly kind of in this hyper-vigilant mode, in this survival mode, unable to create from a place where we can hear the soul. And so the other thing that happens is on an energetic level, we get this imprint and this kind of like fuse, this stuck energy within us, right? And so here's the interesting thing about all of it, right? All of it, when we look back at it, especially if we had, we've all had trauma, but some of us had really, life-threatening type traumas. And what happens is we start to see, and then we make this story up that, okay, as a young child, I'm very vulnerable. Adults suck, because what the hell, they were supposed to be, taking care of me. And then all of a sudden they're telling me, like, even though I'm just being my normal, pure self, like, that's not the way, that's wrong, right? And so you build this resentment. And then so anytime that occurs in your outside world, in your business, when maybe there's conflict in your business, in your relationship, maybe when somebody's telling you like, I need you to do this, and your message is, I'm not enough, and your kids, pulling at your attention. And so your old patterning and your core wounds will continue to run the show, and we unknowingly continue to act from that old pattern. And sometimes that, like, it's very interesting when you think about it. Like, it's the same pattern from like decades and decades and decades and decades. And the beauty and the kind of beauty and the funny thing about life is it constantly gives you these external prompts so that you can heal. So here's how survival and the soul work. First, the soul comes in, pure self. Then the wounded sort of human beings start to give you their wounds. And as a child, you think, okay, that makes me very vulnerable, which is true. But at the same time, universe and life knows that you are also very powerful. So you take in these wounds physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, and you start to put a lot of energy because it's so traumatic that you almost are forced to find the answer. And you're forced maybe in that kind of dark hole, in that dark space, in that like rock bottom, to realize, okay, maybe this is not what I want. And so how do I get out of this? And so there's a moment in your life where you start to decide, I think I want to change. I think I want to transform, right? So you go through this journey of surviving and protecting yourself, and sometimes literally protecting yourself from life and death. But what happens is when we've done that for so long, especially us in the healing space, in the coaching space, in the wellness space, and we have all of these beautiful like workshops and everything to heal us, what happens is sometimes we're along our journey and we're close to where our soul continues to whisper to us. But we get caught in this healing loop because we are continuing to listen to the old imprints that tell us we weren't enough, that tell us that we are inherently broken. And so we believe and buy into that unconsciously. It's not like we're doing it on purpose. It's not like we know, okay, I'm going to choose that, right? And then what happens is that the soul constantly whispers to you. And so in order to start to listen to the soul, we have to go on that healing journey. But sometimes where we get stuck is in what I call that healing loop, where we continue instead of, and the way it looks like in business, instead of implementing a strategy in your business, you go back to a healing mode. And then you take that energy and you don't know what to do with that fuse of energy, and you don't realize, okay, first of all, what strategy should I put in? Who do I serve? What is the clarity I need now? And how do I find that, right? And so if you were to work with me, the very first thing we do is we clear that physically, mentally, and energetically. And then we start to learn how to ground in the body because, and especially if you had trauma, sometimes you tend to live outside of your body or mostly in your head, right? Because we live in a body, and the body is this beautiful way, this tool of regulating our nervous system and calming all the systems and creating stability so that when all of these emotions arise from these outside triggers, we're able to process them. And that's what we do on week 4, where we start to process emotion. And then week 5, we start to clear the mind. And this is the moment in the practice, and who a lot of you who've been practicing meditation, where that's where you start to hear the soul. That's where you start to hear what it is your next step, what it is that you want to do, right? So I'll give you an example. We had a client, Jenny, who when she was younger, so she's this very successful business owner, runs her school, and she has amazing workshops, and yet she was burning out. She was taking care of all the things in her business, all the things at home, taking care of, like, she has a really big family, right? Taking care of her partners, taking care of the kids, and leaving very little room for her own zone of genius, for her own soul's calling, right? And so when she was younger, what would happen was her parents used to fight. And so her physical body, literally her energetic field here in her gut was literally, when we looked at it, was literally pushed towards the back. And her posture was literally like, I want to just hide in the shadows and I don't want to be here. And her baby brain equated, okay, they're fighting, and maybe if I weren't here, because they're kind of fighting over her, and not just that, but that was part of it. So her story was, her imprint, her story from a way back when was, if I weren't here, then the fighting would stop. So here's the magic of what happened when we started to do the 4 weeks of processing, clearing, getting grounded, processing emotion, and clearing the mind. That story that she took on that wasn't actually true, that if I weren't here, then things would be better and there would be stop fighting. And of course, that happened also when it happened in her relationship. It happened if there was conflict at work. It happened with conflict at her kids. So her natural survival mode would kick in and say, "Ooh, I'm just gonna disappear. I'm gonna bounce. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna like numb myself and get out of here," right? Because it's like reliving that trauma again. And so when we did the week 5, where we start to clear the mind, what the soul, and this is, none of us, we did not, like, I didn't make this up, she didn't make this up. What the soul whispered to her was, you are so worthy that you're worth fighting for. And that was the voice that came in. And so that's what I'm talking about when your business begins to get driven by your soul. Because it's, the way the soul speaks is in that very way. It's just like, it will give you this insight all of a sudden. And it's not like you were thinking about it. It's not like you wanted it to happen. It's not like, it's really just from that place. When we can calm the body, when we can process emotion, when we can clear the mind, and we can start to hone our energy, which is the next week, what starts to happen is that you start to hear more and more clearly the soul. When you're in survival mode, the soul is always going to push you and continue to show you things like, oh, look at this. And it gives you, again, another opportunity to heal. And the beauty about that is it also forces you to develop tools and processes. So I want you to listen in on this, guys, okay? Because your journey is literally giving you the gifts all along the way. And what looks like shitty circumstances is actually, okay, this is another opportunity to discover your tools, to discover your process so you can heal. So that's what the journey looks like. And you think it's like this long journey that never ends. And oh my God, I've been on this healing journey forever. And you start to dramatize it. Oh my gosh, why isn't my business working after I've given myself to all of this like healing? But if we start to recognize that all of those opportunities that look like kind of crappy circumstances, maybe we're overwhelmed, maybe we're overworked, maybe we have insomnia, maybe all of our relationships suck, you know, maybe our health is going down the drain. It's this constant opportunity to say, okay, here is now where you can go into this, find your tools, and start to process it. Because guess what? What we start to realize with all my clients, and this is the pattern that we start to realize, is that along your journey, you were given the clarity all along. It just didn't seem or feel clear. Until lo and behold, so for example, one of our clients today, what she does, Claudia, actually, she's here, she helps people with abandonment for people who have mentally ill parents, right? I have another client, Nancy, where she came to me. Again, she looked like she was confused, right? But it's because she was operating from that survival mode. And again, she was imprinted with a story that left her confused because she was acting from her pure self. Again, her parents were in that place where they had a lot of conflict. And they constantly told her, like, you know, go to your mom, no, go to your dad. And so she was just constantly like, I don't know what to do. And she was just acting from her pure self. So of course, that transposed onto everything she did. So the truth is, she wasn't actually confused in her niche because, again, the soul is always kind of giving you these opportunities and giving and showing you along the way, right? So what happened is that, so now she is a coach for adult ADHD because that's the thing she has gone through in her life, and she has developed processes and tools, and she has clients who she helps process them and allows them to see that their ADHD is actually not a kryptonite, it's actually their superpower. You see, so people in the coaching, healing, and wellness field, what happens is they get confused and they think because they're experiencing their own healing and processing their own trauma, they feel like they misdiagnose and misinterpret, thinking, I I'm not expert enough. I haven't healed. I'm still broken. So let me, and then the antidote that we tend to do is, oh, let me go take another training. Let me go take another healing. And that is helpful, but then we don't necessarily know how to take that energy and start to redirect it into our business. And so with all of our clients, after we've done the healing process, then we start to move and master our energy first in our own body, and then learn how to redirect it into our business, right? So all of a sudden, your zone of genius becomes a priority, and you're not doing all of the things, feeling like you're like this busy entrepreneur and hustling and working and all that. You start to realize, what is the thing that I actually love doing, right? And then we start to prioritize that, and we slowly, because it takes time, because your nervous system and you are used to the old pattern, and that old version of you is actually fighting to stay alive, right? What happens is that we start to now have freed up energy, so that we can actually now put and then we have clarity of who we serve. We start to put our energy into our business, and we start to implement very simple strategies. So I teach you how to own what it is you do. Start to own your expertise. So you get out of the whole, like, I'm confused, I don't know what to do, I'm not expert enough, and spinning there, because you can spin there for decades, right? And you start to recognize, oh my God, my assets and my expertise and my healing journey have been the answer the whole time. So you will notice that your clients, if you're confused about this, if you're wondering, right, and your zone of genius, the thing that you love, has been in front of your face the whole time. So your clients are a version of you when they had decided on their healing journey, I think I need help, right? Or in the case of my client who is a figurative artist, she always was given, these platforms of being on the board of, in the art community, being asked to teach workshops, being asked to be part of these festivals, and so you start to see it's been there the whole time. And so what we start to do as we begin to listen to the soul, what it starts to do is we start to learn how to first work with the mechanism of survival whenever it comes up, because it always will, and then begin to trust, right? When our soul is like, go do that. You are so worthy that you're worth fighting for. So all of a sudden, your frequency and the way you start to conduct your business has much more longevity, because you don't get burnt out anymore, because you start to see, and again, it's a process, it's a recalibration. I'm not saying all of a sudden it's like bam, you start to practice being in that frequency. And because that pattern has been decades and decades and decades, it's kind of like it's constantly, you're going into the frequency, and then you kind of go back into the familiar, because survival, right? What it loves is familiarity. What it loves is doing something that feels safe. So that's why sometimes we get stuck in doing what it looks like we love, because it feels kind of safe. And that other thing, that thing that's calling us, the thing that we know is going to cause transformation in our life, in our client's life, is still a scary place. So what we teach you if you were to work with me, is we start to work with that mechanism. And then we start to slowly and slowly and slowly learn how to listen to the soul, so that you as an entrepreneur can continue to learn how to build certainty in what you do, because that's probably one of the most challenging things as an entrepreneur, is whether, like, am I doing this right? Like, because there's no guidebook. We always have mentors and coaches, and that's what the beauty of coaches is. They kind of maybe have experienced something, right? So if I were your coach, it's like you would leverage my experience, and I can just simply give you the next best strategy. Because it becomes overwhelming when you're like, oh my God, okay, what should I be doing? Should I be on this platform? Should I be on Facebook? Should I be on YouTube? Should I be on Instagram? What do I do? when really fundamentally, the very first step is to get that clarity and understand what your soul has been, calling out to you this whole time. And then now, how do I actually direct my energy intentionally so that I strategically plan my business day so that that part of me expands, and everything else that is draining, that maybe I'm good at or I'm not even good at, can start to fade away. So it's like with our client who was doing the figurative artist paintings, she started to realize, okay, I think, working for my family is really something that drained me. So, we start to slowly take that off the plate. Okay, all of these little small jobs, okay, maybe that's not where I need to direct my attention. We start to take that off the plate. Maybe I need to go to sleep, right? And we start to create a workflow, right, where we're starting to delete what it is that we know completely drains us, is not our soul's calling. We start to delegate. Okay, maybe yes, I have been the breadwinner, but I can't be the breadwinner and clean the whole house at the same time. So we need sometimes to delegate, and then sometimes to automate, where it's like, okay, yeah, I've been doing my books, I've been doing the bookkeeping. Okay, maybe I can get somebody to help me do that, right? And when you're marketing yourself in social media, the way that looks like is you're going to start to develop, and I start to teach you how to create a operation system based on what's working for you. Expand that, and an operation system so that you continue to build on the processes that you know, and so then you can slowly delegate that to your teammates. You see, so you're always building on a foundation that creates longevity. You're always building on things that you know have always been the thing, has always worked. Because the thing is, when you're in your zone of genius, you may notice that it flows. You may notice that it is actually healing you. You may notice that, time is not, it's not of the thing in front of your face, right? So when you're starting to run your business from the soul, and you're running from that channeled place, you start to notice that when you're actually in your zone of genius, you're almost like time is non-existent, and you become time, because you become the creator of your life. Because once we get out of survival mode, then we can create, because in survival mode is a very difficult place to create. And if we are going to create, it's going to be, very manic. It's going to be a place where very often we burn ourselves out. It's going to be a place of survival. It's going to be a place of reactivity. It's going to be a place where let me just keep on doing all of these things to just fill that need to, that I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not allowed. So let me just do this thing, because this thing is a safe thing. This thing is the familiar thing, and that's what survival mode is. And survival mode, just so you know, I'm not saying, oh my gosh, never be in survival mode, because it's important. We need to know when we walk on the street that we need to stop when the cars come, right? But the problem is when we're constantly making decisions and it feels like life or death. Should I put this post out there? Should I say this to my client? Should I name this? Should this be the title of my program? And it's like this life and death situation, and if we don't choose the right thing, then we're just going to die, right? And that's our old version of ourselves that literally is hanging on, but no. This is, you've always stayed here in this safe little box, so stay here. So it kind of that version of yourself sort of pulls you in, and that all of that the same iteration of the same story continues, and it seems so convincing, right? So there needs to be this process of healing, right? And so if you were to work with me, that's what we do in the first 5 weeks. And then what starts to naturally happen is that when you align with your soul, naturally those who are aligned with you, those who are like, oh my gosh, she gets me. And all you're doing from a marketing perspective is simply speaking about your experience. And of course, I teach you it in a way that's strategic so that you can structure it in a way that your clients can identify themselves in what you're saying. Structure it in a way where you position yourself as the expert. So you have all of these unique experiences that have taught you, like just how I was telling you now, it looks like my clients are confused, but really they're not. They're just in that survival mode. And until we start to work with that mechanism, the clarity has always been there. So then the practice is to continue to put the trust in that soul's calling, in that way where the soul is constantly saying, shh, right? In that frequency, in the mind, in our physical body that's actually going to implement the next business strategy, right? So for you, you have these revelations, you have these reflections that perhaps people that you work with think it's this. They think it's their parents. They think it's, because I don't know how to do this. They think it's because I'm not, good enough in this thing, right? Or I'm plagued with, this, trauma, or this, ADHD, or something like that. Or I'm running a studio and it's like I just have to be the studio manager instead of actually being the CEO of my business, right? So for your clients, it looks like it's something, but then you start to teach them what you've realized along your journey, right? So you're just teaching them what you already know, the assets that you've already discovered, right? And then you start to continually take ownership of what it is that you want. And that's what we talked about last week. The purpose of overwhelm is to it's like this juxtaposition of showing you what you don't want and what you want. And so then it becomes this development of trusting what it is that you want. And then when you start to expand and your soul starts to expand, you're going to start to see that financially, energetically, mentally, physically, you start to get paid, right? And of course, your business strategies have to develop a little bit of momentum. But when you are in alignment, so I have a client, Nancy, who she started giving lives. She did 5 lives, okay? And we just started the strategy. So she was kind of like implementing the strategy at, 80%, right? And yeah, and she was nervous. Maybe she looked like she was reading, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know necessarily know how I was saying. I kind of sounded like I wasn't flowing," even when she presented from that place, because she was in alignment with her soul. Guess what? 6 clients, right? 6 high-paying clients, because all of a sudden, when you're in alignment and that mechanism is starting to heal, the survival mode mechanism is starting to heal, then it's this natural thing where your clients start to magnetize towards you. For Jen, at the week 4, someone called her and commissioned 2, not just 1, 2 paintings for $4,000 each. Right? When she was doing all of these small jobs, all of these dollar per hour things, right? In the 4th week. Why? Because she started to understand that mechanism that was in play and start to heal that part and start to redirect her focus on what it is that she loves, what it is she knows she's meant to be doing, right? Is this making sense? I'm not seeing the comments because it probably means that it's not showing up here on my phone. So I want to see if anybody wrote in. If you have any questions, type them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay. All right. So, just to recap, okay, we start to see how survival mechanism shows up in your life and in your business. It's very much, it looks like and you feel like you're doing all the things. You're hustling, you're burning yourself out, you're burning the candle on two ends, you're overworking, getting underpaid. You're kind of, it looks like the thing that you love, but for some reason there's this deep longing and yearning and knowing that this is not exactly what I want. It's sort of kind of like, yeah, I am kind of teaching yoga, but it's not exactly what I want. Yeah, I am kind of doing I am kind of doing art, but it's not exactly what I want, right? And so here's the thing, okay? What we want to take in consideration, right, is that the survival mode journey, right? When Claudia's saying, like, I'm tired of hustling, and Katie's saying being in survival mode and thriving are being like in two completely different realities. And here's where I want you guys to start to merge and understand how these two are working together. So that survival mode, what happens is that we continue on this journey. So we come in as our pure self, that's what we talked about at the beginning, and then we continue on this journey, and then all of these kind of survival experiences, right? Like I kind of told you guys, where when I was teaching yoga, I was hustling, teaching, going from class to class, and I saw like food. I was in a mall and I saw food on a table, and I like literally thought to myself, oh my gosh, I would eat that food if nobody was watching, because I was like hustling and hungry, right? Like the starving artist, right? All of those. And then I realized when I look back at that, it's like I didn't even question whether I was on the right path. So what happens when you're on your survival journey is it's starting to give you all these gifts. It's like, ooh, look at this. This is part of your journey, and this healing process is going to give you the gifts to heal yourself and heal your clients. Do you see? And then what happens, because we're in such survival mode, because we're in these life and death situations, we start to create a lot of energy around it, right? And so it becomes this fuse. And then here's the thing. When we take this fuse and we misdirect it into all of this busy work, we misdirect it and, oh my gosh, I need to heal more. We misdirect it on maybe people pleasing, that different iteration of what our parents had taught us, right? We misdirect our energy. What happens is we stay in this healing loop, and we don't necessarily learn how to jump out of that and start to direct our energy into what it is we love and trust that process. So if you're in a place where you feel like you're just so freaking tired of the hustle, this is the time to take notes. Because there will come a day, especially if, this is the thing about the soul, especially if you're following the soul's journey, it is so compelling that you will go broke, you will, get a divorce, you will, almost go homeless, you will do these things because your soul is compelling you, because you're in such need of alignment. And so the more that energy goes into alignment, into that fuse, right, the more gifts we're given along the way, the more processes and tools are given along the way. And eventually what happens, so it's like the seed that is in chaos, that is about to explode into, bursting into blossom, right? It feels so chaotic, it feels so tight, it feels so contracted, it feels like, oh my God, when am I gonna get out of this, right? You're on this verge of breaking down so that you can break through and break free. So I want you to start to assess your situation of where you're at now and really utilize these moments, because once you're out of it, right, because you will be, right, if you're on that soul's journey, most likely you're almost just compelled to. So it's like the soul will kind of not let you give up. That kind of happens for me, where it's like, I will do this till the day I die. It's just it. Like, even if maybe I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna take a break, Yeah, that kind of doesn't happen, right? Because my soul is constantly compelling me. And because my foundation is my practice, the soul's voice is becomes louder and louder and louder, where that momentum starts to continue to drive me forward. So right now, it's like, I don't know if you ever see that picture where somebody's digging and digging and they're almost about to give up, but there's all this gold on the other side, right? When you're in this survival mode, this is a time to continue to take notes, to continue to take in the processes that you're going through, because you will not know how to transmit those processes unless you yourself have gone into it, right? How can you help somebody with abandonment? How can you help somebody who is suffering from anxiety? How can you help somebody who doesn't understand their own condition and understand how to utilize that condition if you haven't gone to the depths of that that hole, right? So the fact that you're in that place, it is now the time to reflect and take in the gifts. They don't feel like gifts. I know, because your survival mode is so strong. It's like, but there's purpose, right? If it wasn't strong, then you would just be like, whatever. You would just kind of give up and lay there. But their survival mode has that purpose of it just keeps on wanting you to push forward and protect yourself. And then this is your opportunity to take notes. And then all of a sudden the soul just continues, right? And so in our practice, we start to practice more and more. What are those moments? What are those practices that continue to let me hear my soul and stay in that place of quietude, stay in that place where I start to connect to something that is outside of here, right? Outside of here, into that frequency where we are these eternal beings, where that place of infinite possibilities are available to us. And we start to draw our energy and our power from that. And all of the power that we gave away, especially when we're children, we don't realize we just gave it away because we have these open hearts, right? I teach you how to take back that power and give back the power that that's not yours anymore, right? And then that creates more and more energetic clearing. And so the frequency that you continue to hold yourself in is going to create longevity. And the interesting thing, especially in the healing community, is that we're really good at maintenance. We're really good at calming ourselves down. But when it comes to almost going just a layer deeper into that place of awe, into that place of wonder, into that place of literally remembering my soul and getting in touch with it, hearing it. We sometimes intellectualize and we think we're doing the practice, especially if you practice yoga, you practice breathing, you practice energy work. We're so habituated to it. We kind of still stay a little bit on the surface, and the reason why I know this is because this is me. I'm really good at staying calm throughout my day, but that sometimes keeps me on a superficial level. And there's moments in my day where I need to just go even just a little layer deeper. That place of stillness, that place of quiet, that place where I can really just hear and feel my soul literally, right? And be in the frequency of awe, be in the frequency of magic, right? And again, as much as woo as that sounds, you will only know the truth of that when you practice. And that's why I love working with people who have been on a journey, right? Because what I realize for you guys is that you have all the assets you already need. So we don't have to go through this whole long journey. We just have to refine that journey and continue to let yourself put your energy into that trust. And then I'm going to give you you're going to leverage my experience, and I'll give you just the next best strategy in business, because you don't want to have to do all of these things. And I've done that. I've done the DIY online marketing programs. And my client Nancy, she did like 4 programs, premium programs, and she thought, okay, maybe if I did more branding, maybe if I did more marketing, maybe if I made a website, maybe if I was on social all the time. And she realized, even though she's a really savvy, smart business owner, there was still part of her that every time she kind of would try to implement, there's this feeling of feeling stuck, right? And now she has like a group of, I don't know, a couple hundred students that she leads every day through her process, and she's giving her clients massive results because she finally trusted in her ability to coach.